Hi, I thought a sample for our informative speech, it might be kind of fun to do an informative speech on how to do an informative speech. So here we go. How many of you are freaking out or a little concerned about putting together your informative speech? No worries. This is something our whole class is going to go through together, and we're going to manage it just fine, especially when we realize that it's not difficult to do if we break it down into manageable pieces. And what are those manageable pieces? One, it's really important to understand how this speech is similar to and different from the first speech that we gave. Two, it's helpful to understand that this speech requires a certain amount of research and some oral footnotes. And it's important to understand that you have to be really narrow and really specific. We got to really narrow down those topics in order to make them manageable. But if we do those three things, we are going to knock these informative speeches right out of the park. So let's get started by comparing something new to something that's familiar. And let's take a look at how this next speech is similar to and different from our last speech. In terms of similarities, these are both informative speeches. They're not persuasive speeches. They're not speeches to entertain. They're speeches to inform. So the general purpose is the same for both. Like your first speech, this next speech is going to follow that introduction, body, conclusion format. A lot of the elements in the introduction and the conclusion are exactly the same, and this speech is going to be delivered in much the same way that your first speech was. There are some differences, though, between your first speech and this next speech. Most importantly, this speech is longer. This speech is 5 to 6 minutes long, all right? This speech does incorporate a new element in the introduction. It's called the relation to the audience, giving your audience a reason to care about your topic. This speech requires a visual aid, and this speech requires that you do some research and cite that research through your oral citations. So those are the similarities and the differences, okay? We are adding a few things to this speech, so it's a little ironic because we're adding stuff, but we have to be super specific, and we got to really narrow down those topics. Students will often choose very general topics, I think, to give themselves some latitude or wiggle room. So students will say, oh, Mrs. Haug, I want to do mental illness, or I think I'll do sports. If you Google mental illness, 266 million hits. Sports, nearly 26 billion. Where would you even start with something like that? So it's really important, and keep this in mind, the more specific and narrow your topic, the easier the speech is to do. Here is a quick graphic from the Mississippi State University Library's website, and I accessed this on October 4th, 2019 on a page titled Narrow Your Topic. And as you can see, it starts with this very broad topic, fish, thousands of species, saltwater fish, freshwater fish. Okay, we narrow it down to catfish, but what, eating catfish, catching catfish, where they live, what they do. Okay, we can narrow it down further to catching catfish, pole, net. Hey, in the research, you might find out about catfish noodling, sometimes called catfish tickling, as an extreme sport. That would be an awesome topic and one that can be easily covered in 5 to 6 minutes. So thanks to Mississippi State for that graphic, okay? Now, one quick quote from your textbook, Stand Up, Speak Out by University of Minnesota Libraries Publishing. They say, and I quote here, that it's important to determine whether your topic can be realistically covered in the amount of time you have. So again, be as specific as possible. When we're exploring our topics, we're probably going to realize that there's a lot of things that we might not know about our topic, and that's okay because we're going to do some research. Researching a topic that we're interested in and that we care about should be a great deal of fun. Personally, I love doing research, and you're going to do some research on your topics, all right? Make sure that you check out on our Canvas page the page entitled Mrs. H's Handy Dandy Research Tips. It talks about all kinds of different sources that you can use. And please do not be intimidated by oral footnotes, all right? All oral footnotes allow you to do, according to, here's an oral footnote for you, according to the Oregon School Library Information Systems YouTube video entitled Citing Sources, Why and How to Do It, which I also accessed on October 4th, 2019. Citing your sources allows your listeners to do further research on their own if it's a topic that they're interested in. It allows you to lend authority to your work, and it communicates to your audience that you have done your research. So this is why we do them, and they're not that hard to do. You've heard 3 oral citations in this speech. They're not that clunky. They're not that hard. They take a little bit of getting used to, but don't be intimidated by your oral footnotes and have fun with your research. So we have now taken a look at the 3 big pieces to get to whipping this informative speech into shape. How it's different from and how it's similar to the first speech that we gave. How to sufficiently narrow a topic, the narrower the better, all right? How to narrow that topic down, and a little bit of information regarding the research. You need 3 sources. We don't do a written bibliography for this speech, but we do oral citations within the speech. So 3 sources, and you can use, just like I did, you can cite the source of your visual aid, and that can count as a source if it's that kind of visual aid. Obviously, if you bring in a model or something like that, that might not be as easy to cite, but certainly a graphic from a web page worked for this one. So you have learned all the pieces that are necessary in order to do a fabulous informative speech. So go forth, get it done, and make me proud.